It feels like a lifetime ago, but I still remember it clearly, like a memory that returns in pieces whenever the wind grows cold or the sky turns silver just before dawn. My name is Maria. After my graduation, my family planned a trip to the northern mountains, a small break before life truly began for me. I was thrilled. We hadn't gone on a proper family trip in years. Everyone was coming: mom, dad, my little sister Hina, and most importantly, my older brother Amr. He and I were always close, in that unspoken way, where we didn't need many words to understand each other. We headed to a valley surrounded by snow-tipped peaks and lush green hills that sloped into crystal rivers. It was beautiful in a way that made you forget cities even existed. After days of planning, we pitched tents near a riverbank beneath a sky scattered with stars. The wind was cold, but it carried with it the scent of pine and wildflowers. Our campfire crackled with warmth and laughter, and for once, all of us were together with no distractions. That evening, as everyone sat around the fire, sipping tea and telling stories, I felt restless. The silence between the mountain walls called to me. I stood and began to walk along the river, thinking I'd only be gone for a few minutes. But I wandered further than I realized. The air turned colder, sharper. The sky, once speckled with stars, grew veiled by fast-moving clouds. I didn't recognize the bend in the river anymore, or the shape of the trees. I turned around, heart beginning to beat a little faster, but the path back looked different in the dark. I tried to retrace my steps, but the silence grew heavier, the shadows deeper. Every sound seemed amplified: branches cracking, the distant rustle of leaves, the low hush of the river. Panic started to rise in my chest. "Maria," a voice echoed suddenly through the trees. I stopped. That voice. It was Amr. A flashlight's beam sliced through the dark, and soon enough, I saw him walking fast, wrapped in his thick jacket, his face tight with worry. "Where were you?" he asked breathlessly as he reached me. "You scared everyone." I could barely speak. My lips trembled, not just from the cold, but from the creeping fear that had built up inside me. He saw it in my face. He didn't scold me, didn't question me. He simply put an arm around my shoulders and guided me back through the woods. I remember leaning into him, grateful beyond words. Back at the camp, most of the family had already gone into their tents. The fire had died down. Amr led me to his tent since mine was zipped up and the wind had picked up. The temperature had dropped rapidly and my fingers had gone numb. I hadn't realized how cold I'd gotten until I saw how red my hands were. "You're freezing," he said, unzipping his bag and pulling out an insulated flask. "Here. Just a sip. It'll warm you up." I hesitated. "What is it?" "Just warm apple drink. I made it for the night. You'll feel better." I took a careful sip. It was sweet and spicy and ran warmly down my throat. I sighed. For the first time in what felt like hours, my body relaxed. The cold no longer bit as sharply. I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders as we sat inside the small tent, listening to the wind howl gently outside. "Why'd you go off like that?" he asked softly. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I just needed to think. Everything's changing, Amr. Graduation's done. The next part of life starts. It's exciting, but scary too. I guess I just needed to feel small for a while. To remember that the world is bigger than my worries." He nodded, silent for a moment. "You're braver than you think, Maria." That meant more than I could explain. For a moment I looked at him, really looked at him, the way his face looked so serious and kind at the same time. The glow of the lantern threw soft shadows on his face, and I realized how much I'd always leaned on him, especially when life felt uncertain. Then there was a sudden gust of wind, and the tent rustled like something had brushed past it. I flinched. "Probably just the wind," he said quickly, trying to reassure me. But he looked unsettled, too. We sat like that for a while longer. He wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and rested a hand lightly on my head, just like he used to when I was younger and had nightmares. I rested my head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Let's just lie down. You need rest," he said. I nodded. My body was tired. He unrolled the sleeping mat and let me take the inner side of the tent. As I lay down, the warmth of the drink settled in deeper, and my eyes began to feel heavy. He lay beside me, quiet and still, breathing calmly. There was something safe about that moment. The world outside could be cold, dark, and unpredictable, but inside this little fabric tent, I was okay. The last thing I remember was his hand gently brushing my hair away from my face and the softest whisper of, "Don't worry. I've got you." I don't remember falling asleep. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the tent fabric. I opened my eyes slowly. My head felt hazy, like waking from a dream that you're not sure was real. Amr was already outside, boiling water for tea. I sat up, wrapped in layers of blankets, and walked out quietly. He looked up at me and smiled. "Feeling better?" I nodded. "Yeah, just tired." He handed me a mug of hot tea and didn't say anything more. He didn't ask about the night. Neither did I. That day, we packed up our things, said goodbye to the river, the valley, the mountains, and began our journey back home. But something about that night stayed with me. Not fear, not confusion, but a feeling I couldn't quite name. Maybe it was the mystery of the mountains, or the way the river seemed to whisper secrets only the stars could hear. Or maybe it was the realization that growing up doesn't happen all at once. Sometimes it takes a quiet night, a long walk, and a brother who finds you when you're lost. As the car wound down the narrow roads away from the valley, I kept glancing back at the fading peaks. Something about that place had changed me. I wasn't sure how to explain it, even to myself. That night had felt so vivid, so strange, yet soft around the edges like a half-remembered dream. I thought about the warmth of Amr's presence, the stillness of the moment, and the way his voice had lingered in my ears long after I drifted off. Later, at home, life returned to its usual rhythm. But every now and then, I would catch Amr watching me for a little too long, as if he, too, was remembering something he couldn't quite name. We never talked about the night by the river. Maybe we were both afraid of what words might reveal. But in quiet moments, when I sit by a window in the cold or when I smell pine in the wind, that night returns. And with it, the memory of safety, confusion, and a silence between us that was louder than anything either of us ever said.